Um, Welcome to week 0 ACM, and welcome back to everyone who's back. I'm Shlomit Osceola. I'm a non-traditional student here, so I am in the last term of my junior year. I am ACM moderator. ACM, for those of you who don't know it, is all college meeting. Acronyms run thickly on the ground here. So in addition to all the stuff that's been stuffed into your brains for the last week, you can try and gather that as well. This is Convocation. It's not a usual all-college meeting, so I won't be here very long. I do want to let you know that next week will be a normal, it'll be week 1 all-college meeting. And on the agenda right now is that we will talk about what is college for. We would like to invite people who've never been to college before this week, people who have been for almost 4 years and are kind of like looking for something else in their lives, people who have been teaching, people who have been on the staff, anybody who's in this community to please come and participate in this discussion. It's a good way for us to start thinking about the frame and the context in which we make the decisions and hold the forums that we do here at College of the Atlantic. So, I won't waste a whole lot more time. I'd like to introduce our speaker today. Amy Hoffmaster received her bachelor's degree from College of the Atlantic in 2006, and she's the Deputy Director for Program Design at Citizen Schools, which is a group that works in schools across the country to reimagine the middle school experience for low-income students. Any of you who have been in middle school can imagine that it could use some of that. As part of the National Program Department, Amy, who's based in Boston and holds a master's degree from Harvard University Graduate School of Education, helps provide support to school leaders and teaching staff. She's tasked with ensuring her group's practices and approaches are in line with current thinking about how adolescents learn and connect with the world. Amy came to COA with an interest in marine biology and studied ecology, natural history, and marine sciences before her interest in science led her to explore brain development and educational studies. This circuitous COA route piqued her interest in how children develop and cemented the path that she would take. Amy's unexpected path echoes those that many of us take to get here and demonstrates one of the values of a liberal arts education as we experience it here at COA. No matter where you start, the end is a mystery. To tell us of her journey, let's welcome Amy Hoffmaster.
Thanks. Thank you for that kind and generous introduction. I'm really excited to be here to share some thoughts with you, kicking off a shiny new school year. For a lot of you, perhaps the start to your path here at COA. And I'm going to skip over a little bit of my own background because Shlomo said it so nicely, but I especially loved classes that I took at COA in things like anatomy, physiology, psychology, human development, and the arts. And when I started, I had a few assumptions that I was wrestling with about college in general and college here. I knew that sort of the building of marketable skills and building my own intellectual capacity was really important and part of a good college experience. And as I visited colleges and made my choice about where I wanted to go and why, I found myself really disliking the idea that college would somehow, in a vacuum, prepare students for the real world, as if they weren't already living in communities and participating in the daily goings-on of people around them. I can only guess that many of you are wrestling with some similar tensions, whether you're just starting or whether you're entering your final year thinking about what happens next for you. And maybe adding one to the mix, the biggest question of all. How can I focus my learning? How can I be open to what I can learn from various disciplines? And where should I go for depth? Where should I build deep understanding and take time? Should I become a marine biologist or a scientist? Or do people make careers of things that bring together my varied interests? Is there work out there that I can do that matches what I love that I don't even know about yet? I haven't even seen in practice. The perspective I'd love to share today and talk a little bit more about is that the connections to individual people here at COA, professors, students, and the broader community, will allow you to take educational risks and try things out for size, in a supportive environment that's in many ways unique. And an openness to exploring unexpected ideas and finding solutions to in unpredictable places is a strength that I was able to build here at COA. But that approach wasn't one that I had an easy time with at first. Early classes felt fairly uncomfortable for me. I was shocked, actually, to find that I preferred the clarity of a well-defined pathway for a course or a clear indication of what my teacher's expectations were. I wondered at times if I had made a mistake in choosing a pathway that looked really different from my college experience. I wanted to avoid an overly narrow focus, but I struggled to manage my time. I struggled with procrastination, and I also found it hard to sometimes engage deeply with material when I wasn't going to be held accountable in a traditional sense. And sometimes I was a bit trapped by that freedom to choose my course, feeling like I didn't know enough yet to set up a good direction or craft a plan that I could carry through. And that's where the perspective of other people and the support from others was really essential. So I want to share a couple of thoughts that might help shape your approach when you feel these tensions, if you already have or if you continue to in your early weeks here. And before I do that, I want to just tell you a little bit about what I do now and how those experiences at COA inform my work. So as you heard, Citizen Schools, the organization where I've worked for about 4 years, partners with public schools, middle schools, and low-income communities to provide an expanded learning day, so extra hours at the end of the school day. We do academic support for students, and most notably, apprenticeships, where students build skills like communication, collaboration, innovation, and problem solving through in-depth experiences with community volunteers. So we use a project-based approach. Topics for apprenticeships include everything from dance and the arts to coding, cooking, and invention. So each apprenticeship has about 20 kids, and they're taught by 2 caring adults. The first is a teaching fellow who's an early career teacher at the school serving as part of a fellowship, and then 1 or more citizen teachers from the community who commit to teaching a 10-week course once a week in that school. So these citizen teachers who are adults from the community, perhaps they work for a local company or they are just interested in coming to the school to improve the school day for students. They're compelled by the mission of Citizen Schools. But they may have never been invited into a middle school to contribute to a middle school community before. Or perhaps they volunteered at their own children's schools, maybe in the suburbs, and they can be really surprised to find out some of the challenges and the gaps in access and opportunities that you'll see, what that really looks like and feels like in urban schools. So Citizen Schools is about 20 years old, and it shares what's both, I think, a big idea with a lot of potential to transform and change education, and something that's shockingly intuitive. That in order to address the gaps in opportunities between students from more affluent families and those from less so, students need more access to activities, support, and visions for their future selves, and that we can bring adults who have access to those things and have power into the classrooms to provide that. Students in the schools where I work need more time to engage in those rigorous experiences that open their eyes, and it can be surprisingly novel and easy to just bring those adults into their lives. As you can imagine, a 10-week apprenticeship becomes a learning experience for both those volunteers and for the students. They'd explore the topics together, they gain new insights into a field that they might, the adult might think they have a pretty good understanding already, but things look different when you see those ideas through the eyes of a middle schooler. And our students ask those adults tough questions about how they've made the choices in their lives. How did they decide what they wanted to do? Where did they go to college? Why did they do that? What would they do differently? Our citizen teachers learn about the strengths of the students in their classrooms, and they see them do amazing things. They often become advocates to support the hard work of teachers and leaders in the schools where they serve. After all, community members are the citizens who make decisions about funding for schools, setting priorities in public policy. And imagine what these insights can mean for those schools as they begin to value schools even more and see what can happen. So the focus of what I do in my particular role is a bit narrower. As the Deputy Director of Program Design, I work on translating external research and our own internal research combining that with insights from evaluations and research from the broader field to improve our program, to understand what's working and what could be better. And that informs what we do with students every day, year over year. So that includes the overall design of the program, how long we spend on what, and also curriculum development, the actual lesson plans that we use in our classrooms. One of my favorite elements of my work is planning out and carrying investigations or tests to think about changes we might make to our programs. We design year-long plans to investigate certain ideas, help us study and understand how those things are working, and really test those new ideas out before we apply them more broadly to our entire program in our national network. So this is really at the heart of testing new ideas and trying things out, of teaching and learning across a lot of schools. This is the way that schools improve and change over time. And our teachers and school leaders really work tirelessly to bring new and sometimes really unexpected opportunities to our students by thinking innovatively about what the after-school time can look like, what support to middle schools really should be, and who can participate in those experiences with students effectively, bringing in the broader community. So before I set foot at COA, I already knew that I valued connecting academics to real-world experiences in the ways that you just heard me describe. From my first semester on, I worked on and off of campus. I worked in schools. I was always really curious about what educational theory or ideas looked like in play. I wanted to see them happening in the world, not just the classroom here. After my first year, I also worked in the Education Studies Department and in an after-school program at the Connors Emerson Elementary School, where I got to know families and students, but even more importantly, I got to build some relationships with teachers there. So I realized that having the access to those early opportunities in classrooms and being invited to actually join the community of schools on the island really helped me to understand the moves that talented teachers and leaders made to connect with their students and to support their schools. So right away, I saw the value of going outside the classroom to connect theories in a complex context. I took ecology and natural history in my first semester and fell in love with the landscape of the island, waking up on cold mornings to go explore in the park. And then a year later, when I was an instructor in summer field studies here at COA, I was able to teach back so much of what I had learned through those adventures, uncovering things that I hadn't even realized I had internalized. We guided students to explore topics like food systems and tidal ecology, and as my co-teachers and I developed the lessons and adventures that we'd take those 5 to 12-year-olds on, I was able to see how much I had learned from the instructor Scott's methods of teaching, which at first just seemed like we tromped around in the park a bunch and we paused for questions. And then moving right along, we moved on to the next thing, really guided by the group's inquiry and what they were curious about. When we tried this out with our students, it worked surprisingly well, really just modeling what we had seen done. I was surprised to reflect on how deeply that approach had informed my approach to environmental education and what I had learned without even really formalizing it. And it was around this time that I realized that I wanted to work in schools to improve education for a few reasons. It was becoming increasingly clear to me that the problems that public schools face are complex and that new ideas and thoughtful collaboration would be really essential to ensuring all students have opportunities that they deserve to become informed decision makers in our communities. And from a few early observations and classroom projects in schools, I began to feel really strongly that the best way for me to contribute to solving ecological and social challenges would, at a scale that I was passionate about, would really be to make a difference through working in schools. But that felt like a bit of a risk. I didn't think ahead of time that I would want to be in education. So you've already taken a bit of a turn, whether you're just starting here or whether you've continued on for several years at COA. At some level, you've embraced the value of remaining open to educational risks. And I have a couple of practical ways that I think in your next year, as we're looking ahead, you can continue to follow the intuition or curiosity that brought you here. And I'm sharing these mostly because as I was reflecting on them, I wish I paid a little bit more attention to these couple of things. Because even after my time at COA, I continued to learn some hard lessons about them. The first one is to find ways to save enough time in your schedule to actually talk to your classmates and people outside of your classes about the text you're reading, about the ideas you're encountering, about your early, maybe not so smart sounding thoughts about them, and those questions that you're wrestling with. Do that outside of class with various people, and it'll help you move your thinking forward. You'll also retain and understand those ideas better if you connect them with an individual, a person. And being available for these conversations, even when you feel really busy or stressed out, will help you build the friendships that will sustain your ability to keep going. When you realize you have a choice to make, more often than not, between kind of pushing through, learning an algorithm, memorizing something, or just getting it done, push yourself to learn about the deeper concept, building conceptual understanding, and accept that it's going to take a little bit more time, because that's kind of the point. Okay, this one is about taking classes that you are intrigued by, but maybe nervous about or scared of. And I'd love to encourage you to do it a couple of times, not just once. So if you've ever said aloud, I'm really not a math person, take a math class, take 2. Take more than is the baseline requirement, because this will give you a chance to examine that discomfort, understand where it's coming from, and our communities really do need people who have confidence in various ways of thinking to express their ideas. Imagine crossing an entire discipline off your list of I can't. That's a powerful thing. And the same goes for art. If you've ever sat down to sketch out an idea and mumbled, oh, I can't draw a butt, take an art class and learn how to express yourself through visual means. That reasoning is really important. And then finally, this one's a little bit less glamorous, but I think really practical. I'd encourage you to use your semester's projects to try out strategies for managing your time and managing projects. By the time I was taking more advanced classes, I was able to kind of wrangle a demanding syllabus and do a lot of reading, but I often felt stuck for strategies to use with more open-ended projects. And this is something that you have an opportunity to learn from and try out. So everything I've ever had to manage in my work looks much more like an open-ended project than a carefully laid out syllabus. So in these moments of discomfort, I was beginning to embrace, and I think take on, a little bit of fear of failure. And as a learning community, you're in control of normalizing and making okay, accepting when those new ideas don't work out. And you're responsible for that, for each other, and how you respond. Building learning experiences that value failure and the process that it takes to learn from it is something that I've turned to focus on in my work, and something that I think COA professors carefully build into classes. When projects are connected in this way, students have lots of opportunities to kind of have frequent small failures that lead to better work. They have opportunities to revise their thinking, to think through an idea and feel challenged by someone without feeling attacked. Having a conversation with someone who has knowledge about the ins and outs of a policy or an approach to provide course correction or new ideas for you to consider is a really important way to learn about the different approaches that you can take. So at COA, I found that classes that were most tightly linked to the community and had those connections helped me walk away with projects that might have had some significant bumps and feelings of like, uh-oh, along the way. But in the end, that work was more thoughtful and sound for those inputs, and even those sets of early setbacks. Here are a couple of examples from this past school year in my work that I see those kinds of thinking playing out. So this one's about an invention apprenticeship. So I was at a WOW, which is our community showcase, where students kind of show off their culminating projects. And I asked one of our students, what would have made this apprenticeship better for you? And I was sort of pleased, maybe a little smug, but not quite satisfied when she said, I wish we could do apprenticeships every day. I want to do them more. I thought maybe she was like buttering me up because she could see where I was coming from, or maybe she wanted to make her teacher look good. So I pushed a little further, and I said, so why would that be better? And she shared that in her 10-week invention apprenticeship, she liked actually having a chance to build her ideas, but it took a long time to get them right. she said, I still have a bunch of ideas that I need to for my chair designs that I want to test out, and I didn't have enough time. For this one, I had a second idea that I think would actually work better, but I had to build my first one so that I would have something to show today. So that's why I would want the apprenticeships to be longer. I want to do it more. So this idea, I have more ideas I need to test out, the drive that she was feeling to keep going, it was really inspiring to me. The mindset that she was walking away with and sort of continued curiosity beyond what was required or what anyone had particularly asked her to do. I hope that that perspective was one that she could transfer to a physics class or the rewrite of an English essay, that she wanted to actually take her thinking further. Apprenticeships like this one help inspire students to think of themselves as creators and solvers, active participants in conversations to build understanding. They were brainstorming, they were testing potential solutions, and evaluating possible models that they could use for their chairs in this particular case. So this is a set of habits that's crucial, and one that I think we really need to solve complex problems in this world: global health challenges, climate change, access to healthy food, and most other big problems that you can think of. Here's another example about my work with adult volunteers. So about 1.5 years ago, I started working with a developer at Google named David, who was working on a computer programming program that he had developed. And so over several years, he taught a few groups of students to use the program to make their own games. And we were excited about it because students could code in blocks, they could use text, and they could kind of go back and forth between these different ways of visualizing coding. It really allowed them a lot of opportunity to test out ideas they had about coding, and they could combine different parts of computer code to make their own remixes of projects. So his enthusiasm for this project and what he had been able to do with students was kind of tempered by the fact that he tried to help another group of adult volunteers do the same thing with a group of students. And it didn't really work out the way he wanted. He wanted to scale up this idea, but it didn't have the right parts in play. When he taught the curriculum himself, students were engaged and they created projects, and he was able to provide feedback and support that helped them do that in a safe and fun way. But when he tried to share his lesson plans and his materials with other volunteers, it didn't work out that way. They just weren't getting the same results. Students weren't having as much fun, and their projects weren't as exciting or good. They didn't feel as good about them either. So for context, there was a lot that led me to this moment. When I went back to graduate school in 2010, I had 2 goals. One was to build my skills in program evaluation and this sort of statistics side of research methods and understanding educational research. And the second part was to understand how technology, which is so ubiquitous in students' lives, could be used for good education to help build understanding rather than sort of compartmentalize or take up students' time and be a distraction. So over the next months, we worked with a team of some volunteers and some writers to test activities from David's collection, revise the instructions, and really rework the scope of the 10 weeks so that new volunteers have some ideas and resources and suggestions that would lead them to have the experience that was more like David's, even if they hadn't taught the unit before, and even if they weren't so sure about how to approach it on their own. We infused principles of adolescent development, examined assumptions about how middle schoolers learn and want to learn, and we provided more opportunities for hard fun. We made the activities really challenging. We added pathways to final projects that had structure available if students needed it or wanted it, but would also allow them to diverge if they felt ready to do that. I felt proud of this project when we saw students work, and they were proud and excited to share the programs that they developed. They were excited to share the programs that they made that were very precise and accurate and followed the templates that had been shared with them, but they also felt really excited about the strange code that they had developed, mistakes as they were. An example, one student accidentally, because he typed a number in wrong, made a sneaker pop up the size of the whole screen. It was very overwhelming. But he thought it was really funny and it made everybody laugh. So when he actually developed his real game, that was one of the feedbacks. If you won a level, a huge sneaker popped out at you in celebration. It sounds silly, but when it made his class laugh, he realized that that little mess up was not really a mistake. It was kind of a cool thing he had decided to add into his project, kind of taking it in stride and creating a really engaging game of his own design. So to wrap up, I hope I've shared with you some ideas of how my path at COA is contributing to what I do now. And I wanted to just share that despite the connections that COA helps build and forge with the broader community, the inertia to kind of take that cleaner, clearer path can be really strong and sometimes feel even more like a logical or practical way to get through. Here you'll meet students from around the world. There's a community of smart people on the island, and there are supports on campus and even beyond campus to extend your thinking even to a broader community if you travel or you go elsewhere to kind of extend your studies. And I hope that you'll find ways to continue to take those risks and be changed by them, even when it feels difficult, to remain open to the uncertainty wrapped up in them. That's all for me.
Thank you, Amy. Oh, it's great to be back. So the next thing on today's agenda is a musical performance by John Cooper and Eloise Schultz. Please welcome them.
Are laughable, unphotographable, but you're my favorite work of art. Is your figure less than Greek? Is your mouth a little weak when you open it to speak? Are you smart? Oh, but don't change a hair for me. Not if you care for me. are jumping and the cotton is high. Ooh, your daddy's rich and your mama's good looking. So hush, little baby, don't you cry. One of these mornings, you're gonna rise up singing. Spread your wings and head for the sky. But until that morning, oh, nothing can harm you. Oh, so hush, little baby, don't you cry. So hush, little baby, don't you cry. Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold my hand. In other words, won't you kiss me and fill my heart with song. Let me sing forevermore. You, it's you I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true. In other words, I love you. The more I'm with you, baby, the more my love for you increases. And at you, baby, my love for you will never cease. 'Cause nothing is as good without you, baby. And baby, you're my centerpiece. I'll build a house and garden with you, baby, where we can really find release. Around the road and country garden, along a country road of peace. 'Cause nothing is as good without you, baby. And baby, you're my centerpiece. Ooh, ba-do-ba-ba-ba. Whoa, oh, ba-ba, shoo-doo-doo-doo, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, sure. Ba-ba, 'cause nothing is as good without you. Baby, you're my centerpiece, yeah. Ba-da-doo.
Just needed a second there. So we're almost done with this whole crazy orientation week. for those of you who've been crazily orienting. Please don't get tired of this building and this room. Lots of amazing things happen here. Come back. Come back for ACM. Come back for movies. Come back for performances. Come back for lectures. Use your time wisely, but I can tell you, as someone who took 40 gap years before completing my college education, what we have here in college in general and at College of the Atlantic in particular is a storehouse of opportunity, and the doors open, and when you open one door, another door opens. Go through them. Soon enough, your life won't be like this. It won't be as hectic. You'll be busy, but it won't be like this. So take advantage of every opportunity that you can, including the opportunity to sleep. So I'm about done with my little gig here today, and I'm going to listen to the next speaker who always engages me, and then I'm going to go run and get my bathing suit and take another shot at that swim. So without any further ado, the president of College of the Atlantic, Darren Collins.
Should probably just stop, right? I mean, it was so good, we should probably just stop, but I bought a boat just three weeks ago. Yep. And her name is Nunu. And Nunu is the Egyptian goddess of the sea. But despite the name, it's a very modest boat. It's just 12 feet long, has a rigid keel, and an outboard motor. But I can promise you that this boat turned my world upside down, and I thought this was the perfect place to talk about it. So I've always considered myself a terrestrial kind of person, right? I am at home on rivers and lakes, but the ocean always seemed spooky and malevolent. Now, I've been on boats with Toby and all out at sea, but there's something very, very different about being the captain or a pilot of a vessel, whether that's a tiny little kayak or a huge freighter. It's something about the responsibility, the decision-making, the freedom, and of course, the complete change in perspective. The world looks entirely different when you're on the water than it does when you're on land. Now, the magic I've experienced on Nunu also has to do with novelty. So in piloting Nunu, I'm a child because in the sense that I know so little, right? There's so much new to know. The winds, the tides, a complete new change of language. It's forced me to grow up again, to go through childhood again. But like a child, I'm also vulnerable, where my consequences on the water are intimately tied to my decisions and are also much more severe than on land. You know, you miss a knot when tying your shoes and you might fall over, but you miss a knot on a mooring and Nunu is gone, right? So whether it's tying the knot or stepping off the dock or adjusting the choke, filling the gas tank, all these things require ultimate presence. Ultimate presence. And I think it's the 326 million cubic miles of seawater that inspires this reverence and presence. Despite this vulnerability, I'm, for some reason, more willing to step into the unknown. And I think it has to do with the community that is boat people. There's a degree of remarkable kindness among those who are captains of boats. Everyone seems excited to help me, the child, walk on water, whether it's Rosa DeYoung helping me with a bowline knot, or Tom, right, Rosa, yeah, or Tom Fernald up in Allied Whale lending me some gear to be safe, whether it's Toby helping me get set up on a mooring, or my fisherman friend Dan Clark keeping an eye on me on Channel 7 on the VHF, or this guy Adam Hilton, who I ran into, who helped tear my carburetor apart piece by piece on the back of the boat just so I could go out and enjoy spring or fall on the boat. And so there's this kindness on water, and it's unlike anything I've ever experienced. And my suggestions based on this revelation were, first, don't wait until you're 45 to become a captain of a boat. Come to know our ocean and come to be part of this kindness that is the ocean. You're in one of the best places in the world to do it. Obviously, you need to be thoughtful, safe, and respectful, but definitely do it. So that's my first story of kindness. My second involves COA alumna Chloe Chen Krause. A lot of people know Chloe, right? Chloe graduated in 2013, and I spoke with her yesterday just to make sure I had the green-white light to tell the story. And in her second year, Chloe went off to Costa Rica as part of a field ecology course taught by John Anderson and Steve Ressel. And she said it was an adventure unlike she has ever had, not unlike me on Nunu out in Frenchman Bay. And unlike that, she was vulnerable. She experienced this intense vulnerability. And one day, the students were set to go out and do their independent research. And Chloe approached Steve Ressel and flat out said, "Steve, I can't do it. I can't go out there alone." And hers, of course, was not an irrational fear. That fer-de-lance snake that is around Costa Rica is every bit as deadly as the cold depths of the Atlantic. So she said, "Will you come with me? Steve, come with me." And Steve said, No, I'm not going to go with you. He said, "Chloe, this is something you've got to do on your own. I know you're ready for it. You're prepared." It was the kindest, gentlest, most appropriate encouragement possible. That kindness and Steve's expertise and knowledge were a safety net that made it the wisest decision in the world to go off into the woods. That walk in the woods was transformational for her in the truest sense of that term, and it began a cascade of growth unlike anything else she'd experienced here at the College of the Atlantic. So 2 weeks ago, Chloe came back from her second field season of 3 months in duration doing independent research in Madagascar, where she's studying lemurs as part of her doctoral program in anthropology at Yale. So that kind of transformation that Chloe experienced is something that everyone should experience at some point. And it requires the kindness and support of a mentor or an advisor. It requires the risk-taking we talked about already and the vulnerability. And more often than not, it requires something that we might call an expedition, something that takes us beyond or outside of, beyond our comforts, and sometimes beyond our campus. So to facilitate these kinds of expeditions I just talked about, we've created what's called the Student Expeditionary Fund. And it will provide all students to the College of the Atlantic $1,800 towards such expeditionary work. That's good. So in week 2, remember we're in week 0, in week 2 we're going to circulate kind of a how-to guide about all of the details, both for students and advisors, but here's what it looks like. The funds are for these expeditionary off-campus courses, internships, senior projects, or residencies. The use of the funds requires the negotiation with and an approval of your advisor. So this is absolutely crucial. And you have to be in good academic standing, and you have to have paid all your bills. First-year students have to be here at least 3 academic terms before they can use the funds. Transfer students have to be here at least 1 academic term before they can use the funds. And for those students that have research and travel awards that are already in their financial aid package, this isn't on top of it. So again, the specifics and frequencies about how to withdraw, what kind of amounts, can I use it for conferences, all those things will come out in week 2. But for today, I wanted you to think about Chloe and think about your own version of this expedition. First-year students, I want you to think about to begin the process of developing a relationship with an advisor. And for everyone, again, think about that kindness, that non-romantic, non-hokey, deeply empathetic kindness, the radical kindness that helped Chloe venture into the woods. And then my last story, also related to kindness. And this requires Sean Foley to stand up. There he is in the back. Sean. Sean's a new faculty member at the college. He'll be teaching drawing and painting. Just super excited to have you on board, Sean. And I will say about 1/4 way into your job talk, I always sit in the back. And 1/4 of the way in, I saw everybody going, oh, yeah. We are so excited to have you here. And then Tim. Tim, would you stand up for us? This is Tim Liardette. Yeah. You can sit down if you want. It's all right. Yeah. Tim's a fantastic poet. He's on the faculty of the Bath Spa University in the UK and has authored over 10 collections of poetries. He did a poetry workshop here last year. It was so good, we said, we got to get this guy here. Even if it's only for 10 weeks, we're super excited to have you. He's teaching poetry as synthesis this term. And then Abigail, is Abigail Curlis here? There's Abigail. So Abigail, Abigail just started as my new executive assistant. And I tell you, it's a huge, huge relief to have Abigail after 3 months of not having an assistant. Thank you. Now, how about 105 new students? I want you to stand up, whether you're transfer or first years. Woo! It's so friggin' exciting to see new blood, and we love that you're here from all over the world and all over the country. Welcome. So, yes, we have one of the most beautiful campuses. We're located at one of the most beautiful places in the world. Yes, we have one of the most innovative ways of teaching and learning. But the root of our success and excellence is about all of us, the people that are here. And this enormous wave of new people, new thinking, new enthusiasm, it's something we celebrate today. How about Heather Albert Knopp? There's Heather. So many of you are like, well, she's not new. She's been here for a long time. But, yes, Heather is new because she's new through experience, having just led the college through a new web redesign that went live today. So I wanted to thank Heather and her leadership for that. Yeah. So yes, today, I'm concluding, don't worry. Today we recognize that COA, that colleges, but especially COA, we're always and all new. We're all new through experience, and human ecology is about the expeditions, the encounters, and the experiences that transform us, right? Whether it's me on Nunu, whether it's Chloe out in the forests, but also people like Heath Cabot coming back from a Fulbright in Greece, Ken Klein coming home from France, Drew Colbert coming home from an ocean voyage. These things, this human ecology has transformed us into new people, right? And it's about becoming comfortable with this newness, with complexity, and with the lack of definitive answers. At COA, we live in this sea of newness and vulnerability, and living in such a sea requires kindness, right? And not the hokey politeness, but that deep, empathetic, radical kindness. That provides us this strong net that we can feel free to leap out on. It's a kindness that's about wanting everyone to succeed. I desperately want all of us to succeed and to help us all succeed. Every student, every faculty, every staff. Thank you for listening, and welcome to the new academic year. Yeah.